Messi may have just broken one of the strangest World Cup records ever. Not by scoring, not by assisting, not by lifting a trophy, by becoming the first player in history to miss a penalty in 3 consecutive World Cups. And somehow, that embarrassing statistic has turned into one of the most entertaining football debates on the internet. The moment that penalty stayed out, I knew exactly what was about to happen. Not because of the miss itself. Because whenever Messi misses a penalty, football fans immediately split into 2 completely different realities. In one reality, Messi becomes the king of missed penalties, a player who somehow collects bizarre records as aggressively as he collects goals. The jokes start flying, the memes appear instantly, the comments write themselves. In the other reality, nobody cares. Because a few minutes later, Messi scores anyway. And that's the part that makes this entire conversation fascinating. Most players live and die by a missed penalty. Messi somehow turns a missed penalty into a footnote. Think about how unusual that is. For most stars, a penalty miss becomes the headline. It becomes the defining image of the match. The clip that gets replayed for days. The thing critics point to whenever they want to question a player's mentality. With Messi, the penalty miss often becomes the opening scene. The actual story starts afterward. That's exactly why so many reactions online looked almost confused. Some fans were celebrating the miss like they had discovered the ultimate argument. Then Messi scored twice. Suddenly, the conversation became awkward. How do you mock a player for missing a penalty when he still walks away with multiple goals? That's the contradiction that has followed Messi throughout his entire career. His penalty record has never matched the perfection people expect from a player often described as the greatest ever. And that's where things get controversial. Because if we're being honest, penalty taking might be the biggest weakness in Messi's legendary career. Not dribbling, not passing, not vision, not free kicks, penalties. That sounds absurd considering the number of goals he's scored from the spot, but expectations change when you're talking about a player operating at a historic level. Fans don't compare Messi to average footballers. They compare him to football perfection. And perfection leaves very little room for repeated misses. The internet exploded with comparisons to Cristiano Ronaldo almost immediately. Of course it did. No football debate stays isolated for more than 5 seconds before turning into Messi versus Ronaldo. One side pointed toward Ronaldo's reputation from the penalty spot. The other side pointed toward overall World Cup performances. Then the arguments got louder. Then the memes got better. Then football fans did what football fans always do. They stopped discussing the actual match and started discussing 20 years of football history instead. What caught my attention wasn't the miss itself. It was how differently people interpreted the exact same event. Some fans saw failure, others saw confidence. Some argued that missing 3 World Cup penalties across 3 tournaments exposed a flaw. Others pointed out that even after the miss, Messi remained among the tournament's top scorers. Same moment, completely different conclusions. And honestly, that's why Messi remains one of the most polarizing athletes on earth. Every statistic involving him feels like evidence in a court case. Nobody simply observes. Everybody prosecutes or defends. Look at the reactions. One group joked that Messi refuses to let anyone else hold records. Good records, bad records, historic records, embarrassing records, it doesn't matter. If a record exists, somehow Messi ends up near it. Another group argued something even funnier. They claimed missing the penalty actually made the match more entertaining because it gave rival fans temporary hope. For a few minutes, critics could celebrate. Then the goals arrived, and suddenly that celebration aged horribly. The funniest part is that this isn't even a new pattern. We've seen versions of this story before. Messi misses, people overreact. Messi responds, the conversation changes. Then everybody acts like the response was inevitable. Football history is full of moments like this. A superstar makes a mistake. The mistake becomes bigger than it should be. Then the superstar reminds everyone why they're a superstar. What makes Messi different is the speed at which the redemption often arrives. Sometimes it takes a season. Sometimes it takes months. Sometimes it takes less than an hour. That's a dangerous trait for critics, because criticism works best when there's time for the narrative to breathe. Messi rarely gives those narratives oxygen. A missed penalty is supposed to create doubt. Instead, it often creates motivation. And that's where the psychological side becomes really interesting. Imagine missing a penalty on one of football's biggest stages. Millions watching, cameras everywhere, social media waiting. The pressure is enormous. Now imagine responding by continuing to attack, continuing to demand the ball, and eventually scoring anyway. That isn't just technical ability, that's emotional resilience. A lot of players become cautious after a miss. Messi usually becomes more involved. That's a huge difference. And before somebody says penalties don't matter, they absolutely do. Penalties count, goals count, misses count. Everything counts at the elite level. But context matters too. If a player misses a penalty and disappears from the game, that's one story. If a player misses a penalty and still dominates the match, that's a completely different story. The second version is much harder to weaponize. That's why many fans online found themselves arguing over what mattered more: the miss or the 2 goals afterward. The answer seems obvious. Yet football arguments have never been about obvious answers. They're about identity. People aren't just defending players. They're defending years of emotional investment. Some supporters have spent decades backing Messi. Others have spent decades backing Ronaldo. Neither side wants to surrender even a single inch. So every penalty miss becomes ammunition. Every goal becomes a counterattack. Every statistic becomes a battlefield. That's why a simple missed penalty generated thousands of reactions. Because it wasn't really about the penalty. It was about everything surrounding the penalty: legacy, greatness, rivalry, narrative, history. And here's the irony: the actual record itself is genuinely strange. Being the first player to miss penalties in 3 consecutive World Cups isn't the kind of achievement anyone wants. Yet only a tiny group of players would even have the opportunity to create such a record. You have to be trusted enough to take penalties. You have to play in multiple World Cups. You have to remain relevant for over a decade. You have to stay elite long enough for the statistic to exist in the first place. That's what makes football records weird. Sometimes an ugly record accidentally proves greatness. Not because the record is impressive, but because reaching it requires an extraordinary career. Very few players are around long enough to fail repeatedly on football's biggest stage. Most disappear long before they get the chance. Messi didn't disappear. He's still here, still scoring, still creating chaos, still generating arguments, still making people angry, still making people celebrate, still making people watch. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway. The penalty miss became the headline for a few minutes. The goals became the memory. Years from now, most people won't remember every detail of the miss. They'll remember the scoreline. They'll remember the performance. They'll remember that Messi once again found a way to dominate the discussion. Whether people loved him or hated him didn't matter. He remained the center of the story. That's a level of influence very few athletes ever achieve. A missed penalty should reduce attention. With Messi, it somehow creates more. The criticism gets louder. The defense gets louder. The debate gets louder. Everything gets louder. And then football fans end up spending hours arguing about one player again. Not because he was perfect, because he wasn't. The miss proved that. But perfection has never been the reason Messi fascinates people. It's the combination of brilliance and imperfection. The ability to produce moments of genius while still remaining vulnerable to mistakes. That's what keeps the conversation alive. That's what keeps rival fans engaged. That's what keeps supporters loyal. And that's why a missed penalty somehow became one of the most talked about moments of the tournament. Not because it changed Messi's legacy, because it reinforced it. A player capable of creating worldwide debate from a mistake. A player capable of turning criticism into motivation. A player capable of missing a penalty and still leaving the match as the main character. Most footballers need perfect performances to dominate headlines. Messi just missed a penalty, scored twice anyway, and reminded everyone of a truth football keeps repeating. The most dangerous version of Messi has never been the one who gets everything right. It's the one who gets something wrong first.
If you enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe and hit the bell to the later update from my channel. Thank you for watching till the end and see you in the next video.